A warm welcome, dear children. We will continue with the morphology of a flowering plant, and in the previous class we did half of the lesson, and now we continue. We talked about the various modifications, etc., and I had also told you that most of it is not in your syllabus. We will have only inflorescence and the parts of the flower as a part of the syllabus this year, but it is important for you to know the other things. So I just did a quick revision of what you had already studied. I just did the basics in the previous class of what you've already studied in your lower classes, right? So now we continue with the parts of a flower. As again, talking about the parts of a flower, we've studied that a flower has 4 whorls, right? So like I told you that there are 4 whorls of a flower, right? So what do we mean by 4 whorls? Now what is this whorl? If you look at this figure, you will find here that this arrangement of the leaves around the stem is a whorled arrangement, right? We can say something like a semicircular form. That is the whorled arrangement, right? So that is a whorl, and all the parts of a flower are arranged in a whorl, right? So there are 4 whorls of a flower. We start with the outermost whorl of the flower, and the outermost whorl of the flower is the calyx, right? Calyx being the outermost, that means the whole whorl, right? This arrangement, the whole whorl, this arrangement of, let's say, the calyx is, this whole arrangement is known as the calyx, and each unit, that means this is one unit, this is one unit, this is another unit, each unit is known as the sepal, right? So calyx is the outermost whorl of the flower, and each unit of the calyx is called a sepal, right? Is called a sepal here. Now what is the function of the sepal? Sepals protect the inner floral whorls in the bud condition. Now if you remember seeing the bud of a rose bud or any other bud, we see that this is the arrangement of the sepals, right? Sepals are arranged like this, and it is still in the bud. This is the bud condition, right? This whole part is the bud, right? And outer green part is the sepal, and what we see here is that the sepals, they protect the bud, the floral parts in the bud condition. So that is the function is of protection. Now if the calyx is we can say united, that means when you cannot differentiate each sepal, when all the sepals are united together, then that we use the term gamosepalous. Then we use the term gamosepalous, right? And at the same time, if we see that the sepals are free, if the sepals are united, it would all be like this one. If the sepals are free, you can see each calyx like this free. Then in that case, it is termed as polysepalous, right? So gamo is when the floral parts are united, and poly is when the floral parts are free. So gamo is united and poly is free, right? So all throughout we will come across this term gamo and poly. So gamo means united and poly means free. Now some examples are given. In some plants, a whorl of green sepal like structures. Now see, in some plants, a whorl of green sepal like structures. They are not sepal, but they look like sepals. So they are sepal-like structures. Now these structures are present at the base of the calyx. Right. Now how are they present at the base of the calyx? I'll just show you the diagram. Before that, now this part is known as epicalyx. Right. Now for example, if this is the bud, these are the sepals, you will also find some structures like this below. Right. Now this is the epicalyx. Right. Now why is it said that they look like sepal? Sepal-like structures because they are green leafy structures, right, found just at the base of the calyx, and so they are known as epicalyx. The unit of epicalyx. Now what is the unit of epicalyx? Again I draw the diagram here, right, with sepals, and these are the epicalyx. This is the unit of epicalyx, which is known as bracteole, right? It is known as the bracteole. So family Malvaceae has this, right? So we will just quickly go through the diagram of the epicalyx, right? If you look at this here, we see that this part is the calyx region, right? And you see how it is protecting the floral parts, the other floral parts, the petals, and this part here is the epicalyx, right? And this is the bracteole. That is the unit of epicalyx is known as bracteole. That is the bracteole, right? So that is the diagram of the epicalyx. Again, if you look at it here in this particular figure, you can see the bud, right? This is the bud of the flower, right? This part is the calyx, right? And this that I have shown with blue, this region is the epicalyx, right? And you can see how each unit of the epicalyx, which is known as bracteole, many bracteoles together form the epicalyx, right? So you can see the bracteole also there. So that's about the epicalyx. I hope it is clear to all of you. We move on to the next part, that is corolla, right? Corolla, it is the second whorl of the flower. Whenever we talk about the whorls, we start from the outermost, right? So calyx is the outermost, or we call it as the first whorl, right? Corolla is the second whorl from outside, inner to the outermost whorl, right? That is the second whorl is corolla, and the unit of corolla is called a petal. Now if I just draw a floral, a flower over here, right? Now this whole structure is the corolla, and each unit is known as the petal, right? So many petals together will form the corolla, right? That means this whole whorl of many petals is known as corolla. So that's the corolla, and usually the petals are brightly colored. We've all seen beautiful flowers, right? And mostly they are brightly colored. Of course we see white petals also, and they are scented. So petals are brightly colored and they are scented. Why are they brightly colored and scented? To attract insects for pollination. So what is the function of petal? Since they are brightly colored and they are scented, they attract insects for pollination. So this would be the this particular thing would be the function of the petals. Now again, the corolla is said to be gamopetalous, fused or united, and polypetalous when the petals are free, right? So polypetalous when the petals, each petal when you can see freely, free, that is polypetalous. And if you see that in a flower, the petals are arranged like this, tube like, right? These are the petals, but these petals here are all fused, right? Then it is said to be gamopetalous, right? So there are two kinds again. Fused is gamopetalous, or united we say is gamopetalous, and free is polypetalous, right? And the examples are given here. Now comes the arrangement of the floral leaves, right? What is the arrangement? Now we've talked about two floral leaves, that is the sepals and the petals, right? Now how are they arranged is known as estivation. That means, what is estivation? It is the arrangement of the floral leaves, that is sepals and petals, in bud condition with respect to the members of the same whorl, right? What are the members? With respect to the members of the same whorl. That means, if we are talking about petals, if we are talking about corolla, right, then how are the petals arranged in the corolla, that is the whorl? How are the petals arranged in respect to each other? What is the arrangement? How is each petal arranged? How is each sepal arranged, right? So that is in respect to each other. So the first we see is here is valvate estivation, right? Valvate estivation, where the floral leaves in a whorl may just, what are the floral leaves? The floral leaves are the sepals and the petals. So the floral leaves in a whorl may just touch one another at the margins without overlapping. So if you see here, these are the floral leaves and they are touching one another, and then they are not overlapping, right? They are just touching. This is one leaf, this is another leaf, and this is another floral leaf, right? They are not overlapping, right? So then they are these we can say yes. So these are the floral leaves when they are not touching, and they are touching but they are not overlapping. So that shows valvate estivation, right? And whenever you draw the floral diagram, you represent it like this, right? In the floral diagram, this is the way it is represented in the floral diagram, right? Then again I'll show you the valvate estivation. There's a diagram here you can see this is the valvate estivation that we see, and you see how these petals are touching each other. Here you can see, but they are not overlapping each other, right? So that is the valvate estivation, where we see the margins of sepals or petals, they remain in close contact with each other, right? And or lie close to each other, but they do not lap each other. So what do we see here is that when these petals or these sepals, we can say the leaves of these petals and sepals are there together, they are close to each other in valvate estivation, and they do not overlap each other, right? Next we come across is twisted or contorted estivation. In twisted, the floral leaves are arranged in such a way that one margin of the unit, let's see, that one margin of the unit overlaps, right? It overlaps by the preceding one, the one before that. It gives a twisted appearance to the bud. Example is hibiscus, that is China rose. Again here, if you look at the diagram of twisted estivation, here you see how each petal over here you see is overlapping. See this part, they are overlapping with each other. See the difference in this, the margins are in close contact with each other, and here they are overlapping each other. That this is the floral diagram that you will draw. You will see this is one petal or a sepal, and this part is overlapping. Right here, this is overlapping. So this overlapping is seen here, and so since it gives a twisted appearance, it is known as contorted or twisted aestivation. We will just see the diagram of the twisted aestivation. Here you see, if you look at the petals, this is China rose, hibiscus, right? Now if you look at the petals here, you see that the petals are over. This is one petal, and you see the second petal, some of the part is covered by the first petal. So that is how they are overlapping. You see here, this also is one petal, and this petals, some of the part has been covered by this one, right? So this shows twisted aestivation or contorted aestivation, right? We move to the next one, that is imbricate. The third aestivation is the imbricate aestivation, and in this the flowers show the petals or the sepals do not actually lie in a single whorl, right? So that means it won't be a single whorl that it may lie on. Out of the 5 units, one is completely external while one is completely internal, and each of the remaining 3, one margin is internal and the other is external. Now if we look at the diagram of imbricate aestivation, we find here this is the diagram of imbricate aestivation, and if you look at the diagram here, you will see one is totally internal, one is totally external, right? And the rest, you see these 3, how are they arranged, right? So that is the, similarly here if you see, one is totally internal, right? This one is totally external, and here you see they are overlapping each other, right? So that is an example of imbricate aestivation. And imbricate aestivation. Then we move on to the next one, that is quincunxial aestivation. It is the modified imbricate aestivation. 1 out of the 5 units, they are completely internal, while 2 are completely external. In the remaining unit, one margin is internal while the other is external, right? So that is the arrangement of that is the arrangement of quincunxial aestivation. And let's see here, I had diagrams. Okay, I will send you the diagrams of vexillary, etc. This is quincunxial aestivation. Here you can see how these 2 are external, these 2 are internal, and how one is overlapping, right? So here these 2 are external, here these 2 are internal, and one is overlapping, right? And then we see the last one is vexillary. In vexillary, what do we get to see is that that's again a beautiful arrangement. It is also known as descending imbricate. Here the anterior most units are internal, while the posterior units is the largest and outermost. So here what happens is, this is the arrangement, the internal and the external leaves, you find them like this, outermost. So this is how this whole petals or the leaves of the flower are arranged, right? Descending imbricate, this is a part of an imbricate aestivation, and the anterior most units are internal. That means again I will draw the anterior most units are internal and the posterior units are the largest, like this, and they are outermost. So if you will look at a flower with this kind of an arrangement of petals, then that is the vexillary arrangement, right? We move on to the next floral whorl, that is the third floral whorl, which is the androecium, and it represents the male reproductive part of a flower. It consists of a number of units called stamens. right? So each androecium has many units called stamens, or we say that many stamens form androecium, right? So that means the unit of androecium is a stamen, right? So we come to the structure. The stamens produce the male gametes. Now since this is the male reproductive part, right, it produces the male gametes which are called the pollen grains. You studied about the pollen grains. Now coming to the structure of the stamen, each stamen consists of a long stalk called the filament. The tip of the filament bears an anther and pollen grains are produced inside, and the filament is connected to the anther by means of a connective. Now here you see these are all the different types of stamens, right? Here you see the diagram, and this is a picture of a stamen found in a flower. Right here you can see the stamens, or we can call this as androecium, right? And now if we move on to the next figure here, that is the structure of the stamen. We find here this is the filament region, right? And you can see the anther, right? The anther is attached, and if you look at this region, this is called the connective, right? So that is the connective that we were talking about. And if we see a transverse sectional view of the anther, we see that inside there are 4 chambers that are present, and each chamber has many powdery substance which is called the pollen grains, right? Now these chambers, the 4 chambers that I am talking about, these chambers are known as the pollen sac, right? And inside the sac are found the pollen grains, right? So that's about the structure of the stamen. Now we come to again, there are 2 relationships that we see: polyandrous, where the stamens remain free from each other, and cohesion, if the anthers of the flower remain united with each other, they show cohesion. Now please pay attention, if the anthers of the flower, right, the anthers, we are not saying the stamen, the anthers of the flower, if they are united, then they show cohesion, right? Then it says here, there are different ways in which the stamens unite with each other. Let's see. Monadelphous stamens. The first type is monadelphous stamens, where the filaments of all the stamens are united, forming a single bundle. Now if you look at this, the filaments here, all the filaments are united, forming one single bundle. But if you see, if you look at the anthers here, the anthers are free, right? Filament is united, but the anthers are free, and that is the monadelphous kind of stamens. We will look at the diagram of the monadelphous stamens here. You will see that this particular region, you will see, is the filament forming one bundle, and you can see how the stamens, the anthers, are all free, right? So that's about the monadelphous stamens. We move on to the next kind of stamen, that is diadelphous, where the filaments are united, forming 2 bundles, right? Filaments are united, forming 2 bundles. Sorry, it is not this one. Filaments are united, forming 2 bundles. Here you will see, here there are 2 bundles, and the anthers are free. So if you look at this diagram, you will see this is one bundle of stamen, and this is another one. So all together they are forming 2 bundles, right? And if you look at the anthers here, you will find that the anthers are free. Again here you look at the anthers here, the anthers are free. So that is the diadelphous stamens, and I'll show you the diagram of the diadelphous stamen. here. This is the diadelphous stamen, and if you look at them again here, this is one bundle and this is the second bundle, and these are the free anthers, where the anthers are free, right? So the stamens are united into two bundles by the fusion of filaments, anthers being free, right? So this is one example of the diadelphous stamen. We move to the next kind of stamen, and that is polyadelphous stamen. Poly means many. Filaments are united forming a number of bundles, but the anthers remain free. So again here poly means many, and here if you look at this diagram here, polyadelphous, here this diagram polyadelphous, and here you will see that the filaments are united and they form many bundles. You can see 1, 2, 3 and 4, more than one, so they are polyadelphous, many bundles. If you look at the anthers here, all the anthers are free from each other. So that is the polyadelphous condition of the stamen here. If you look at this diagram, again here we find, right, united filaments in many bundles. These are the bundles 1, 2, 3, 4, and inside there are many filaments that are there and they formed one bundle, right? Of course here you can see this is the ovary region, and here you see all the anthers, they are free. So the anthers are all free, right? So that is the polyadelphous condition of the stamen. The next is the syngenesious stamen. Filaments are free and the anthers are united together. Now this is a different situation where you see, if you look at the diagram here, this is a different situation. Here you see each filament 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So we can count here 5 filaments, and each filament is free from each other. But if we look at the anthers, we see that the anthers are united, right? Now this kind of a condition is different, and this is known as the syngenesious stamen, right? The syngenesious condition, and I'll just show you the diagram also of the syngenesious condition here. This is the diagram of the syngenesious condition, where the filaments are free and the anthers are united, right? And the last one is synandrous. Stamens are united throughout their length by filaments and anthers. That means here throughout, this is the synandrous condition, where throughout, whether it is the filament or the anther, throughout they are united, right? So that is the synandrous. Syn also means being united. Androus is related to androecium, that is the stamens, right? So all throughout, the filaments as well as the anthers are all united. So we studied about the stamens, where the filaments are united into a single bundle, then that, and the anthers are free, that is monadelphous. When the filaments are united to form two bundles, anthers free, they are diadelphous. Filaments are united into many bundles, where the anthers are free, polyadelphous. Then we said where the filaments are free and the anthers are united, that is syngenesious. And the last one, where the filaments as well as the anthers are all united, that is the synandrous condition, right? Third we see is adhesion. This refers to the relation of the stamen with other floral parts. That means how are the stamens attached to the other floral parts. Now there are two types: epipetalous, where the filaments are fused with the petals, right? Filaments are attached to the petals, that is fused, that is epipetalous. And if the filaments are fused with the perianth, then that is epiphyllous, right? So two conditions here we come across, and we move on now to the next part, number of lobes in the anther. So the lobes, if the lobe is single, anther has only one pollen sac, monothecous, and if it has two pollen sacs, then it is dithecous, right? So pollen sacs being single and pollen sacs being two. So if it is a single pollen sac, it is monothecous, right? If it is two pollen sac, then it is dithecous condition, right? And we come to the innermost whorl, that is the gynoecium. This is the innermost whorl, or we can say that it is the fourth whorl, innermost or the fourth whorl, right? Now this represents the female reproductive part. Gynoecium is made up of one or more units called carpels, right? So many carpels form gynoecium. So the unit of gynoecium is carpel, right? So that is the unit of gynoecium. Carpel is the unit of gynoecium, right? So let's see, a typical carpel consists of parts: basal, swollen, middle, elongated, style, and upper terminal stigma, right? So the basal part is the swollen part, right? Then comes the tube-like style, right? And then comes the sticky stigma, right? So inside here are the ovules formed, right? So what is the carpel made up of? It is made up of stigma, style, and the basal swollen part is the ovary. Inside the ovary is found the ovules, right? So that's about the structure of the gynoecium or the carpel. Now, position of the floral parts on the thalamus, right? Now if you look at this structure here, that is this structure, this green part, that is the thalamus, right? Now how is the carpel arranged on the thalamus, right? That is what we will talk about. So it says here, based on the position of the floral parts, that is calyx, corolla, and androecium, with respect to the position of the ovary, thalamus, the flowers are described as hypogynous, perigynous, and epigynous. Now let's see what they are. Hypogynous, it says here, position of the ovary is superior to other floral parts. Now if you look at this diagram here, you will see that this is the ovary, right? The ovary is superior, means it is above the thalamus, and it is above the sepals, and it is above the petals, and above the androecium, right? Since it is above all the floral parts, so it is known as a superior ovary, or these kind of flowers are known as hypogynous flowers. Here, this you can see the diagram of a hypogynous flower. You will see here that all the other floral parts are arising below the ovary. Here the ovary is superior. We call this kind of an ovary superior ovary. This is the thalamus, sepals, you can see the androecium, and you can see the petals also, which are arising from below. Above all this is positioned the gynoecium, right? So since the ovary is above the thalamus, sepals, petals, and the androecium, it is said to be a superior ovary, and this kind of a flower is known as, this kind of a position is known as hypogynous. So this kind of flowers are said to be